my name is Kat, and today I'm doing my August wrap-up. So I kind of just want to jump in and get started here because I have 12 books to talk about today. That's right, I kind of read 12 books in the month of August. I did read 1 graphic novel and 8 comic collections, but I still feel like I had a decent reading month. So let's get into this. First up, I have here the Booksplosion Book of the Month pick for August, which was Finding Audrey by Sophie Kinsella. This book is about a 14-year-old girl named Audrey who is dealing with depression and severe anxiety, and she's just kind of trying to find herself again. Her family is really great though. We have a lot of fun family dynamics, and as the book goes on and she starts to kind of grow and get better, she does meet a boy and there is a bit of a cute romance that happening. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was super funny, which is something I wasn't necessarily expecting going into it because we are dealing with some tougher topics. But I felt like Sophie Kinsella handled the mental health issues very well, and I loved the balance of the serious and the lighthearted. We just did our live show for this, so I will link that down below if you want to check it out and hear Christine, Jesse, and I discuss our thoughts in more detail. But yeah, overall, I just really enjoyed this, and I can't wait to read more by Sophie Kinsella because I loved her sense of humor with this one. And I would definitely recommend this to anyone looking for a funny contemporary that has some serious subject matter but is more lighthearted and hopeful than like heavy and sad. Next up, I have here Dark Places by Gillian Flynn, which I do not have a physical copy of because I read an ebook. This is about a woman named Libby who was 7 years old when her family was brutally murdered, and she pointed the finger at her older brother. But 25 years later, Libby meets this group of people who believe that her brother is innocent, and she starts considering that possibility. So she starts reinvestigating this mystery on her own to kind of put her doubts to rest and figure out what really happened that night. I really enjoyed this book. Like, I was so hooked into it right away. It completely captivated me. I especially loved the writing style. Just the way the scenes unfolded and the little bits of characterization, I just loved it. I think Gillian Flynn is a really talented author, and I can't wait to read more by her. Plot-wise, I felt like this was a really unique and unpredictable story, but it did drag a little bit for me toward the end. It was maybe a little too convoluted toward the end, but again, I did still really enjoy it, and I'm very much looking forward to reading more by her, like Gone Girl. I think I'm gonna love Gone Girl. Next up, I have here The Diviners by Libba Bray. This month, my TBR Jar challenge was to read a book with more than 500 pages, and this is the one I chose to fulfill that. I actually switched off between reading this and listening to the audiobook, which I need to recommend to you guys. If you're looking for a good audiobook, The Diviners is fantastic. The narrator, I think her name is January Lavoie, is just amazing. She does all these different voices, and just something about her narration hooks you into the story immediately, and it's just one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. As for the story itself, it takes place in 1920s New York, and we follow a young girl named Evie who's from a small town, and she comes to the city to stay with her uncle, and she is just loving it. But then she finds out that there's a serial killer roaming the streets of New York, and Evie just so happens to have this supernatural gift that might be the key to tracking this killer down. But that's kind of just the surface of what this book is about, because we have a lot of other important characters and plot lines and like groundwork for where the series is headed. But yeah, specifically, I really enjoyed all of the characters and just the atmospheric setting of 1920s New York. This was also a lot creepier than I was expecting, but I loved that. Like, you don't see a ton of horror in YA, but I feel like this might count. Now, it was more on the slow-paced side. I mean, it's a big book. It's almost 600 pages. So there were some scenes that I felt kind of dragged a little bit, and there were some other scenes that happened later in the book that I wanted to happen sooner. Like, I wanted to get to some of these places a little bit sooner. If you're in the mood for something historical and supernatural and like a cool, creepy mystery, then this is the book for you. And I highly recommend the audiobook of this because it was fantastic. Next up, I have here Nimona by Noelle Stevenson. This is about a young girl named Nimona who can shapeshift, and she becomes the sidekick to this villain, Lord Ballister Blackheart. And together they set out to prove that the golden boy of the kingdom, Sir Ambrosius Goldenloin, isn't actually as heroic as everyone believes him to be. I had pretty high expectations going into this, and I was not disappointed. It starts off kind of episodic, which was enjoyable, but once we get going into like this deeper story that's happening here, it just started to blow me away. I was expecting a light, fun read, but not a lot of depth. And it was light and fun, but it was also surprisingly deep. Like, the characters and the world were developed so much more than I expected, and I loved this. I loved everything about it. I thought it was fantastic. It might just be my new favorite graphic novel of all time. I don't know though. Like, this one and Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley are very close. I loved them both. But yeah, overall, I thought this was fantastic. It was funny and beautifully illustrated and so much more powerful than I was expecting. And I loved it. I loved it. Next up, I have here the first 4 volumes of Saga by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. This comic series is amazing. It's probably my favorite thing that I read this month, and I read a lot of really great stuff this month. I don't even know where to start with this because I just loved it so much, and it's so good. I can't, like, the art is fantastic. The art is beautiful, but what really gets me is the story. When I first started getting into comics, I thought they were mostly like light, fun reading, but this, with the depth and the plot twists, there are so many moments that had me actually shocked, like more shocked than I've been when reading other books that were supposed to be shocking. Like, this series, the storytelling is just so fantastic. It's set in like a futuristic fantasy world where this planet and its moon are constantly at war. They can't actually fight on this planet and moon, otherwise gravity is just gonna destroy them all, so they take the battles elsewhere. So this war has kind of bled into every corner of this universe. We follow a young couple who come from opposing sides of this war, and they just had a baby, and now they're on the run. But there's tons of other stuff going on, and it's all awesome, and I promise you will like this if you give it a try. Now, this comic series does have quite a bit of mature content, so I would not recommend it to anyone who's very young or who's not comfortable with that sort of thing, but to everyone else, I recommend this. It's fantastic. Next up, I have here Rat Queens, Volumes 1 and 2 by Curtis Weave and Rock Upchurch. For a while, I was hesitant to pick this up because of the title of Rat Queens, something about that just I wasn't feeling it. I wish someone had compared this to Dungeons and Dragons for me, because that would have made me pick it up right away, and that is kind of the vibe I got. You have this badass group of female adventurers, a mage, a cleric, a fighter, and a thief, and they're just going around and kicking ass and taking names, and it was awesome! I really liked the first volume. It was a nice introduction to the world and just like some basic adventuring shenanigans, but I loved the second volume when just the scope of the story and the stakes and everything just got bigger and better. This series is fantastic and I can't wait to continue it. Then I have here volume 1 of Miss Marvel by G. Willow Wilson and Adrian Alphona. In case it wasn't totally obvious, this comic series takes place in the Marvel universe, and we follow this ordinary teenage girl named Kamala who suddenly gets superpowers. There was a lot of stuff that I liked about this one, but I didn't love it as much as I wanted to. I loved the diversity and I loved how relatable Kamala was, because before she gets the superpowers, she really is just a regular teenage girl sitting in her room writing Avengers fanfic. And once she does get these abilities and she's like struggling to balance these superpowers and being a regular girl, I thought that was really compelling and I really liked that aspect. But story-wise, I didn't feel like this one was as mind-blowing or powerful as it could have been. I really liked Kamala and I would definitely read more in this series, but I felt like this story, this plot, just didn't really stand out to me. I love the Marvel universe that I've seen in TV shows and movies, so I kind of want to explore some other comics and other aspects of this Marvel universe, but yeah, I did like this and I will continue the series at some point. And finally, I have here Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. It's about a woman named Susie who, when she has sex, time stops. Like, literally, she freezes time. And then she meets this guy named John who has the same ability, and naturally they decide to team up and rob a bank. With this one, I really liked the premise. Like, I thought it was so cool and unique, but ultimately it fell a little flat for me. I wasn't really a huge fan of the characters. Like, I didn't dislike them, but I didn't particularly care about them. And while I did think that all the backstory was really interesting, I kind of wanted more of the robbing banks to be happening. So yeah, overall, I did like this, and I might continue the series because, again, the premise is really cool, and I do want to see where this goes, but it's not gonna be a super high priority for me. Okay, that is it. Those are the 12 books / graphic novels / comic collections that I read in August, and that is gonna be it for this video today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great night, and I will have another video up soon, so I will see you then. Goodbye! Recording! I'm using a new mic. This is so exciting. So first up, I have here the Booksplosion Book of the Month pick for August, and I kind of slurred my words there, so I'm gonna try that again. Can't wait for the next one, and luckily I don't have to because it's already out. It just came out. There it is. They can't actually fight on this planet and moon, or else gravity will just fuck all their shit up. I shouldn't say that. Okay. Thank you so much for playing and interrupting me. I don't thank you. I take that back.